I sat down with Dr. Malini Iyer to discuss the upcoming eclipses. We got into quantum physics, neuroscience, deities, Shiva, Shakti, Parvati, and all kinds of wild stuff. So check this out. Hey folks, I'm here with my good friend and amazing student Malini Iyer. We're going to talk today about the upcoming eclipses and some shifts that are going to be taking place also with like Saturn moving into Capricorn next year and some other stuff. But I wanted to have Malini on because she's doing great work and she's one of my best students. I don't even like to call her student. She's a great astrologer in her own right, but she's definitely really doing some great work. Malini, welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for that warm welcome. I am so grateful to be here. I'm doing great. And to everybody out there listening to us, whatever we talk today, they should know I learned it all from you. So if I am a good student, it's only because of Sam. And he wants to get to learn astrology and learn the foundations of astrology correctly. And I emphasize the word correctly. They should learn from you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And one of the things people should know, Malini is a doctor. She's gone through a full doctorate. She's she's used to studying in academic environments. So when I get a compliment like that from someone who has gone through the educational system, then I know I'm doing things right. So I appreciate that very much. Yeah. So why don't you tell us about how you got started in astrology and how you came to doing this? Obviously, you're from India. I know a bit about your story, not as much as you might think, but so I'm always interested in also finding out the path of how you got involved, how you got here, and what's happening with your work and all that. Enlighten us.
So when you grow up in India, astrology is all around you. You hear stuff, never pay attention. And the way, I'll get into trouble if I say this, but Indian astrologers practice astrology is cringeworthy. A lot of them don't have integrity. And of course, people of my generation tend to think about it as just a superstition, something that doesn't have any validity. So I grew up with astrology and words were thrown around and they were always there in my vocabulary. But I really, the impetus was my dad's death in 2011.
Okay.
And it really, he was the pillar of my life. He was my friend, philosopher, guide. My spiritual stuff came from him. Every time I had a question, I would go to him and I would always get the answer that would satisfy. When he passed away, I really had a crisis of soul. I didn't know where to look. Again, astrologers in India would start saying stuff and I would be like, that doesn't make sense.
If I could just say, and not to interrupt, but you had said earlier that they don't have integrity. This is what you said, that a lot of the astrology in India is practiced without a lot of integrity.
Correct.
Yeah. And again, obviously, that could be sort of loaded. Obviously, there are fantastic Indian astrologers, but you mean for the most part, because it's seen as a kind of cultural sort of normal thing. A lot of it isn't as studious and as prepared or something. Would you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So what I mean is, I don't mean they're bad astrologers. They are really good astrologers. Right. But the way people practice astrology is not to really understand how karma is ripened. Right. It is like a quick fix. Do this remedy, you'll be fine. Or it's like a band-aid. Band-aid on things, and it really leaves your client or the person who comes seeking wisdom in dark. They just feel that they are doomed for life unless they do certain things that the astrologer says. So the integrity comes when you actually enlighten people who come to you and help them understand what's happening. And it's not just hocus pocus and people are just throwing words around, but really develop an understanding for astrology. And I tell this to a lot of my friends who do not believe in it, that it's the most ancient science. And that's how mathematics came into being, because people were trying to measure space. That's when geometry came into being. And then from geometry, algebra was derived so that people could just write equations and figure out, the ellipses and all these geometrical stuff that is happening, calculating speeds. And astrology combines physics, mathematics, and metaphysics together. And nobody really understands that because it's not taught that way. People don't talk about it that way.
And when you say, especially a lot of your friends, what I notice is that you also represent a very sort of hybrid astrology, Indian, American, Western sort of being now, because a lot of sophisticated Indians now have a cynical view of astrology because of the way it's been practiced in India. And I just want to be clear too, is that because it's a business and it's practiced in India in a way, again, it's not to cheapen it the way I see it. I kind of just try to see things in the cultural context and in the context of how it's being applied. A lot of Indians who do even believe in astrology, especially older ones, they go to astrologers because they want those things as well. I know, because I have Indians that come to me and they just want me to prescribe gems. They want me to do the things that an astrologer in India would do that they're used to. So there's a sort of collision of cultures with the East and the West now. And so you're essentially saying that a lot of the, like younger, more westernized Indians tend to look at astrology in this way because of the way they see it in their culture, and you're kind of on the sort of cutting edge of bringing it, but back into something that's more also that revolves more around a sort of Western counseling model and explaining things as well, sort of bringing those things together. If I could just offer that, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And yes, that's exactly what happens a lot of times. So I came from that background where I thought that you go to an astrologer to just get a remedy or to predict your future, and then it's a quick fix bandage, and then you keep moving on. And so when my dad passed away, I was questioning a lot of my life. I started taking yoga teacher training. And again, these were Western astrologers, and they were throwing out words which they were like, do this workshop, and it's an Aquarian age. And no, I never really understood what was going on. And thanks to KRS and YouTube, I was looking for stuff. I was Googling stuff and came across a video with KRS, and he had interviewed you. And as soon as I heard your voice and I heard what you had to say, in the very first 10 seconds, I was like, I'm studying with you. I got to study with you.
I didn't know that.
So the first thing I did is I went and booked a reading.
Yeah, I remember the reading. I remember you getting a reading.
And I had already signed up for your course. I think it was the first or the second year. The certification level was running the level 1 certification. I was in the thick of my PhD because I was running experiments and coming up with ideas. I had no idea how I was going to do it. I was on a PhD stipend. I had no idea how I was going to pay for it. I just put everything on a credit card. I knew this is what I need to do. And then when I got a reading from you, I think Jupiter was in Gemini then. So had just moved into Gemini. And he said, you need a guru, you need to study astrology, and I'm going to be in LA tomorrow to see Amma, so you should go and see Amma. And I was there because I really wanted to be in your presence and know this guy that I'm so enamored by and intellectually enamored. I wanted to be you. That's what I wanted to do. So yes, I go and see you the next day, and I'm like, yes, this is what I'm doing. And it was extremely hard. I used to start my experiments because I did my PhD in physiology. It's one of the toughest subjects to do a PhD in. And I studied diabetes and obesity. I would do experiments in conscious animals, in a large animal, so dogs. They have to be extremely calm and quiet, and I was studying the effects of sympathetic nerves and how that affects glucose metabolism. So I would start my experiments at 4 a.m. I was in level 1 certification course. I have to sample every 10 minutes. So in between 10 minutes, I would be studying the material.
Wow.
10 minutes. And that's how I did my level 1 certification in the thick.
That's a Saturn in the first house for you, right?
Yeah, and it felt so easy then. And now I look back, I was like, I don't know how I did it, but it felt really easy, and it felt that that's what I was supposed to do.
Well, your PhD in diabetes and obesity, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and and one of the things about the course, and I remember telling you, like I tell everyone, and you're a perfect example too. I let people know because they're like, "Oh, I'm so busy. I'm so busy." And I get it. I mean, we're all busy, but the good thing about it is that it does fit into your life. I mean, if you can do an hour or two a week for the,
Yeah.
I mean, bare minimum, then you can do it because it's, I mean, even now it's even more, you know, it fits into your life even more easily now. But you're a case study that I always think of. I'm like, look, I had someone who was doing a PhD who went through level 1 and level 2 and nailed it and aced it. But you're a great example of that too, because you're used to studying and you're used to seeing material well organized. One of the things that I felt that I remember you came to the retreat in San Diego, and when I taught on the neuroscience and quantum physics, and I remember one of the I guess it's not just compliment, and I don't mean this to make this all just this big compliment about me. It's actually to compliment you as well. But a lot of people would say, "Oh, I really understood the quantum physics the way you explained it." But a lot of times I know they hadn't really heard of it before. They don't really know what it is, so it was kind of new. And you had come up to me and said, "Man, I had to take quantum physics in college, and I really didn't get it." And you, in like a half an hour, the way you explained it, it made sense. And I was like, I was like, wow, I must have really done a good job with that because quantum physics is hard. The double slit experiment and
Yes.
the casino effect and the quantum entanglement. I mean, these are complicated subjects. So I felt like, wow, like I say, just reflect back the fact that you've gone through college, through PhD, and got something out of it was like, wow, that's quite a compliment.
And yeah, it's connecting the dots, right? How the space and the cosmos around us affects life on Earth, how light and energy filters through Earth's atmosphere and really affects life on Earth. And no, a lot of people don't make that connection. And you were able to make that connection, and it was so right.
How do you see that? I mean, just to get off, I told you when we have these conversations, I don't really know where they're going to go. So they're not, these aren't rehearsed. We just start talking. So you guys are actually just watching a conversation between me and one of my favorite people and students. So do you have any ideas or any thoughts now? Because you have studied that quite a bit. You heard me talk about it and you've been studying astrology for a long time and all. Anything you wanted to share about that too? Like the quantum sort of energetic, collapsing the wave into the particle with our attention and our brain and all of that. Because I also talked about neuroscience, because the neuroscience is in the brain first, and the chart shows our cognitive biases and all of those things. Our way that we see the world, and it's that way that we see the world that we then bring into that quantum moment to collapse the quantum wave possibility into the particle, right?
Yeah. So there are two things to understand here. One is how neurons work. So the way neurons work is they use electricity to transmit messages. And if you take an electric wire and you transmit electricity through it, what happens is it creates electromagnetic waves. The same way is our neurons. That's what we have. We have 7 chakras, which are 7 converging points of neurons, and they have a measurable electromagnetic wave that we can measure scientifically. So you have this entire wiring system that conducts energy, which is your brain and all the neurons in the body that innervates all the organs. And then a simple example is the sun, because we can see the sun, we can see its light. We can see it. So when sun's energy reaches Earth, things happen. Plants grow, there is day. Humans have a circadian rhythm. We respond to it, we wake up. Animals respond to it. So sun is very clear to see. Similarly, the other planets and stars around us that fill the cosmos around the Earth have an effect, have a metaphysical and physical and a psychological effect. That is not so tangible and not so easy to see, but you can feel it if you tune into it. And how do you tune into it? You have these wires in your body, which are your neurons, which are, if you fine tune them really well, you can tune into the energy of every single planet. And I've been lucky to go through like Rahu Dasha because I actually feel the quality of every planet. And when it goes through a certain house, you feel what it is bringing you psychologically, emotionally, physically, what it does to you. You just have to have a really refined tune transmitter, which is your body and your nervous system.
And so you mentioned neurons, which are the sort of particles, like the brain particles of the nervous system, for lack of a simpler way to put it, that move through the nervous system and form the thoughts and the ideas. But it's not just in the brain, it's in the whole nervous system. And those neurons move through the chakra system. The chakras are really just your nervous system, but the metaphysical, it's kind of like the metaphysical nervous system that really connects with the metaphysical energy of the universe and the cosmos and the planets.
Yeah, they're like your neurons are wires, conducting wires. So wires conduct electricity, and basically the sensory stimulus or any information in the brain is conducted through electricity. When electricity passes through a wire, which is your neuron.
Okay, so they're more neurons. Okay.
There are more neurons. Your brain is a bunch of neurons together. So it creates a magnetic energy around it when electricity passes from point A to point B.
This is what would create the aura as well.
Yeah, and it creates aura. It creates, if there are a bunch of neurons together, you can measure the amount of electromagnetic energy there. Planets have electromagnetic energy. Sun has electromagnetic energy. They all have their energy, and it is transmitted via light in the form of waves and particles. Sun's light you can see, but the like sound waves you can't see them, but they are waves and particles. So there are certain energies that you have a sensory system to perceive, like light, sound, taste. And then there are others where you don't have a sensory system to perceive it, but still your mind, your brain, your emotions will perceive it through your neurons.
You have a metaphysical body to perceive.
You have a metaphysical body, correct.
And you mentioned a couple things like Rahu. And Rahu is this is what Rahu and Ketu are. This is what the lunar nodes are. They're the part of us that extend beyond just a physical sensory experience, because we're more than just a physical sensory experience. And Rahu and Ketu are the things that exist outside of that parameter. So when people have very prominent nodes, if I could say your chart, or at least a thing about it, that would be okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Malini also has the nodes in the 1st and 7th house, just like I do, but Malini has Ketu in the 1st, Rahu in the 7th. And I have Rahu in the 1st, Ketu in the 7th. But so when people have the nodal axis, like that's very present, they kind of have this metaphysical kind of vibration sort of always happening. They're very aware, and it doesn't even matter which one is where, but certainly in the 1st and 7th house, they're always aware of the metaphysical, because that's actually what the nodes are. Mm-hmm. Something else I wanted to say really quick while it was in my head is, even talking about waves and particles, this is what happens on the quantum level. When I even mentioned that every moment we come in and there's a quantum wave possibility.
Correct.
The wave is the quantum possibility, but that possibility is already limited by your current circumstances or your current, karma that has led you to this point. Like, for example, while we're in this moment, you and I are in this moment, you're sitting there, I'm sitting there. There's not the quantum possibility to, ride a horse through the desert, because we're already not on a horse and we're already not in the desert in this moment. So the moment arrives in the way it does, and with infinite wave possibility. Even like when we started this conversation, it's possible to say anything, and we're kind of proving it. But then each moment, the wave collapses into a particle that moves through the neurons.
Correct.
And this is what happens. What they did in the quantum experiment is just the act of perceiving the process collapsed the wave into the particle and made something out of nothing just by presence, which is exactly what happens on the quantum level, from the chart into existence itself. Our chart shows our patterns and our habits to have a certain neural network. Mm-hmm. And then each moment, that neural network collapses the wave into the particle. Right. And sends that thought and idea into existence. Yeah. And that creates the world.
Yeah. So
That's what the quantum Vedic astrology or the quantum thing. I just wanted to explain that while it was there because, again, I'm doing this too because it's not every day I get to talk to people who also really understand quantum physics and all this stuff. So anyway, what did you want to say?
correct. So I just wanted to piggyback on what you were saying. So Einstein's equation for energy is E is equal to mc square, which is energy can be converted. E is energy and m is mass. So energy and mass are interconvertible. That's what he showed. And so yes, you can take energy as it's coming in and convert it into a particle, which and it converges in the moment. But the vice versa is also true. So when your own self, your own particle, your own, I consider the human body as a crystal, is very fine tuned, you can send energy back into the space. And but that's not what we study with astrology. But it happens both ways. So energy and mass are interconvertible, which Einstein was famous in showing.
Yeah, the equation is energy equals mass times the speed of light squared, which this is also just this is the formula for atomic energy. Is the energy in the atom equals its mass times the speed of light squared. That's what E equals mc squared means. But so this really deep metaphysical, neurological connection to the inner and the outer, and really dissolving those boundaries between those two things because it's an illusion that it's there at all.
Correct.
We're in constant communion. In fact, it's not even we're in constant communion. We are an extension of all of that. There is not even really a boundary except in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
And this is literally why astrology works and what astrology is doing. The planets rule those chakras. We have a certain karma with each planet that's read in the natal chart, which is actually reading the chakras or the astral body of the person. And through the dasha cycles, certain karmas awaken, which activates certain chakras. And then through the movements of the planets, there's another layer. And one of the things Malini's been doing, which we're going to talk about here as well, is the upcoming eclipses and whatnot and how those things influence and affect. But is that how you would explain it, or how would you explain that interconnection as well?
That's correct. That's bang on the way you explained it. That's how I see it. The last thing I would like to add about astrology and people who are cynical about astrology is all the ancient civilizations that were successful. They were successful. All successful ancient civilizations read the sky. They knew exactly how to look at the stars. They knew the precession. They knew the planets. They knew the speeds of the planets. They had calculated accurately everything that was happening in the cosmos around the Earth. So we are in times where we are evolving and we are rediscovering ancient wisdom. And I have a vision where I think most people will start studying this as their primary education, and that's the level Jyotish should be taught at.
Yeah, I'm doing my part, and you're helping doing your part as well. And you did you want to talk about the upcoming eclipses and stuff like that now, or was there more you wanted to share about what we've said so far?
We can talk about the eclipses.
Okay, let me pull this up. So I have this chart. These are the times that we're going through right now. This would be 1223. Let me move forward a couple days. So 24, 1225. You see, we'll have this. I have this in Ojai. This is the time. But by the way, I have a gathering coming up in Ojai on the solstice, so you're invited.
Oh, nice.
At the place of our friend Moss. He's having a retreat that day. That's why I had this location here. But you could see here on 1225 we have a eclipse. So what do you think about this? What's going to happen? We all going to die? That's what they asked me, so I thought I'd ask you.
Let's talk a little bit about like things leading up to the eclipse.
Okay, like what?
You don't have to change the time.
Okay.
That's totally fine. We just had Jupiter move into Sagittarius, and it moved from Scorpio, where it's strong, but also we can see in world events, and we can see a lot of people in their own personal lives have seen it, where a lot of dark stuff, especially in terms of belief systems, organizations, structures of the world, political system, they've all come up. It's just like boiling and coming up. And then laws and judiciary system, and then Jupiter moving into Sagittarius. So right now we have Jupiter, Ketu, and Saturn all in the sign of Sagittarius. Jupiter is in Mula Nakshatra, Saturn and Ketu are in Purva Ashada. And it's bringing in a lot of focus into things that don't work anymore, especially in stuff that serve as structures, organizations, political systems. There is this constant struggle of power and control that we see amongst people. And it all seems like gloom and doom, but like for half of the zodiac signs, this is really great. It's happening in, like, at the Sedona Astrology conference you talked about, this happening in the 7th house for Gemini. It's really good because Jupiter rules 7th and 10th. It's joined Saturn, the 9th lord. It's forming a Raja Yoga by transit. So for the dual signs, this is bringing in a lot of transformative energy. Also for Mars rule signs. But I've seen, right?
Yeah. I think the fire signs in general as well, because Jupiter aspects that trine.
Trine, yeah.
So for the fire signs, the Mars ruled the sun. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's bringing a lot of transformative energy.
One thing I'll just say though too is that just in general though, the planet in its own sign by transit is in a very good dignity.
Correct.
So the thing we should also understand, even if it's not necessarily bringing, the Raja Yogas by transit show things like benefits, like we would be successful or there'd be success in something or what have you. But even if it's something that might not look like success, like for example, maybe for a Taurus, where it's the 8th house, because it's the 8th house ruler in the 8th house from Taurus, anytime the planet is in its own sign, even the disruption that it's going to create is going to lead to the higher thing that the planet wants to bring.
Yeah.
So what's underneath all of it is that dignity, that intelligence, and that wisdom that's coming, even if it's, pulling things out by the roots that are really painful. It's doing it to show us the truth, because it's Jupiter in his own sign. That's the only thing I would add. But yeah, it's definitely a sort of wrenching time right now.
Yeah. And Venus rule signs, I've done a lot of readings with Libras and Taurus. They're having it rough because Venus rule signs are all about wanting to establish a compromise, wanting to accommodate the other person, justice, wanting equality, and the underbelly of the world is coming up, and
right.
It's hard for Venus rule people. I've seen them being hit the most, especially psychologically, harder to cope with it on an emotional and psychological level. But then there's also a lot of transformative energy, and a lot can be done.
And one thing, just real quick, even the thing that Jupiter going here in Sagittarius can do is it really can bring out this sort of underbelly of fanaticism. Correct. But again, it's going to bring that out to some extent because we're going to see things in much more black and white. And usually that's going to be beneficial. It's at least that we can see the truth now. But if we don't want to see the truth, or we don't want to be black and white about it and say, okay, this is right and this is wrong, then it's difficult. That's why it's difficult for Venus ruled people. That's the reason. Because the Venus ruled people are like, yes, this is right and this is wrong, but there are still people that are wrong, and I don't want the people to be this, and I want the people to still be happy, and I still want to get along with the people. So how can I have my right and wrong and have the people and not say it? And this is what creates the struggle. This is how Venus and Jupiter have the struggle. Whereas others will be like, it's wrong, I'm going to say it. And let the chips fall where they may. So this is the reason I think that you have the struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I've been seeing with Venus ruled people. Um, Also, during the eclipse, Mars will move into Scorpio, but Scorpio ruled people also were having it rough till then because Mars was in their 12th house, but it was in Libra. And I've done a lot of readings for Scorpion ruled people, and they just like, I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand myself, and all the confusion created in their second house, especially in terms of things that are valuable to them, wealth, money, health. They're all confused about it, and they're just like, they want to power through things, but they can't power through things because just Mars in the 12th house is creating all this confusion.
And they also are getting, they had Jupiter in their first house for a year, and they're like, bring that back. Where'd that go?
Bring that back, correct. And similarly for Capricorn ruled people, this is all happening in their 12th house. So I've seen them being hit really hard too, because everything is just confusing. Saturn, their ruling planet, is in the 12th house.
They don't understand
with Ketu. And if they don't have a spiritual practice, which most of them don't, it's hard for them to deal with it. They want to, I know at least 5 different Capricorns who want to escape into gambling, drinking, smoking, just getting checked out, sleeping all day long, or watching, whiling away their time watching HBO, Netflix, etc. So it's been very hard for them to cope. They just don't want to be in the world.
And you see this because of what? Why would Capricorn show that?
Because their ruling planet, Saturn, is in the 12th house of Sagittarius, and then it's joined Ketu.
All those other planets, yeah. So all this is piling up in their 12th house now.
Yeah.
So now they're feeling all of that. And this is one way to just look at these conjunctions when these planets pile up in different areas like that. Now the sun, as we're recording this, is still in Scorpio. Now we're doing this on the 8th. So we're doing this here, but you still have, well, this is Ascendant, but you still have Saturn, Venus, Ketu, Jupiter are all there right now.
Yeah.
And
so keep the screen at this. The other thing that I've been noticing with Venus joining Saturn, Ketu, Jupiter, and Mercury and Sun being in Scorpio, all these energies of control, power, manipulation, and I mean, the political system is the easiest to see because it's projected and magnified, but it's happening on a very microscopic levels in people's lives. And I want to talk about even like I'm in the sciences. I work as a research scientist, so I have to also really know my footing, and then have a strong. I'm called to have a really strong integrity and have strong principles about certain things that I'm willing to do versus not willing to do, and how you present data, how you manipulate data, all that stuff. And I've seen a lot of people struggle through that, especially at work, where it's all about power and control and money, and pulling one person down in order to succeed. And everybody participates in that energy in one way or the other. The only time people take accountability or want to sit back and reflect is when they get the negative side of manipulation, power,
right.
And
so you're saying that even that a lot in your work, which is now you're like a research scientist, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so you're seeing how even in the sciences, even like in your field and your work and you see how these people who are supposed to be scientists and supposed to be functioning with precise data and whatnot, they'll skew the data so that they can get an accolade or an award or get more grant money or things that should be full integrity with only interested in the truth. But of course, because you bring money and politics and fame and all that stuff into it, that has infiltrated everything that we do, you see where there's a real lapse of integrity now. And it's obviously, it bothers you. Do you see where it bothers other people too? Or are you seeing where systems are starting to snap into place where some consequences can, be brought to bear here real soon?
So, when Venus moved into Sagittarius, I actually saw people fear the consequence or not wanting to bear the consequence of speaking up, because many people lose their jobs. I've seen a lot of people find different companies or even change careers because they can't put up with a system that doesn't have integrity.
That doesn't have integrity.
Yeah.
I just want to draw a parallel to the things we're seeing in the world that I talk about quite a bit, like with politics and stuff. You'll see, especially like the Republicans in Congress and whatnot, all the ones that speak up, they then eventually wind up like resigning because they'd rather resign and get out of it than hold the line of integrity and speak out and draw the fire.
Yeah.
We've even recently seen, of course, in some of the political things that have been happening where those who have had the integrity to speak out against things they saw that were wrong have been nothing but mercilessly attacked for doing so. So it's a great deterrent of speaking out and having integrity and speaking the truth is the backlash from the institutions and those who have power. And maybe their power is just for a corrupt motive. Their power is not even to bring truth, but it's just to hold on to their power and to make more money or whatever the heck it is, or to just defend the status quo.
Yes, yes.
So we see this in the politics as well, very clearly.
Yes. And I want to talk a little bit about Ketu. And I'm sure a lot of people on your channel know about Ketu being the body without the head. So it's really stuff that is dark from the past that people don't see, don't pay attention to. And Jupiter joining Ketu, Jupiter's light, bringing that out. Saturn joining Ketu, bringing in scrutiny and looking at things.
And the consequences. I'll just add the consequences of that kind of evasion, because Ketu is about evasion as well. It's about erasing things and burying things and hiding things.
Yes, hiding things. Yeah. So the hidden secrets coming out, and I talk about it with my peers, where the way we practice modern day science is more like media. You present or highlight certain things and then you hide other stuff so that people just see one story and then they run with it. They make I'm in biological sciences, so I have to be very careful. Like, you're dealing with people's life, and if the organization you're working for or the institution you're working for doesn't have a bigger picture in mind,
right,
and is not very principled, you would land up hurting someone's life by running away with one data without any backing, and magnifying it and making a story out of it.
So a kind of real world implication would be like some kind of research data point that might go into like a pharmaceutical drug, and you would highlight the benefit without saying, yeah, but there's a side effect, something like that.
Something like that. Correct.
Like very literal. And you would hide the side effect because you want to get credit for finding the discovery that gives the company money or gives you an accolade, but you're like, oh, but there's this other stuff. We won't really talk about that too much because, it's not that important, and we can just kind of push it aside. Nobody will know, especially since we're the experts. We're the ones that know. Stuff like that, right?
Something like that. Yes. So that's basic science. And then when you move from that, and when science is translated into medicine, the entire system is just so dysfunctional. The way insurance companies work, the way doctors bill. And I feel for the doctors too, because MDs try to bill as much as possible so that they get if they bill $5,000, they're trying to get just $100 paid from the insurance company that will just, knock them down at every step and say this procedure was not required and stuff like that. So it's just like the entire dysfunction of that system is just coming to light, and it's people's health and people's life that are at risk. And it looks like the way where we have come to right now, especially in the industry I'm working in, it feels like people are more interested in others being sick than others being well. So that's been very disheartening. But I've also seen a lot of hope, wherein the younger generation, especially the millennials and the Gen Zs, and I'm a millennial, so I'll speak up for them, have they look at the system and have a lot of integrity to not co-sign the bullshit and speak up, even if it costs them their job or they get attacked. And
all of this reminds me again of the politics that is happening, especially on the left. And all of this, these are huge. Again, look at the politics. Not that I'm just political, but you can completely see it in the Medicare for all. And I mean, all of that whole thing is, it's not because of doctors. It's because of insurance companies. Simple as that. It's to get rid of these insurance. That's what Medicare for all is. It's to take the money out of the insurance companies.
Yeah.
And remove the incentive for pharmaceuticals to price gouge and to address the corruption of pharmaceutical companies price gouging, insurance companies gouging, and us not getting all of the money in the healthcare system is not going from patients to doctors. It's going in bureaucracy, pharmaceuticals, and insurance. And so you can see this in the political process now. And again, I talk about politics because when we talk about these larger themes, these social movements are how the astrology is shown. And we can see it in our personal lives as well, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But because you're in the front lines of this medical system right now and seeing the hypocrisy even behind the scenes, but also in front of it, like we can see that, especially in the political scene on the left, where you have a huge struggle in the Democratic Party, the kind of old line, Joe Biden, Buttigieg kind of, and then on the other side, the Warren, especially Bernie Sanders, the other more very progressive who want to do away with the whole system and say, burn the system. Don't try to reform a corrupt system. And if you leave a little bit of a possibility where you can keep your existing health care or get the, the Medicare for all mandate, if you just leave that little bit, the pharmaceuticals and the bureaucracies will find a way to shut the rest of it out, and it won't make meaningful progress.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing that you're saying about the new generation or the younger generation is trying to throw it all out and start over. And again, I'll bring this back to the astrology. This is this whole Mula ripping it out by the roots kind of thing. Like, look, incrementalism has not really worked very well. And so as we lead up to talking about the eclipse more, because we're getting into this part of it, we'll see how this is what Mula is. So
so as we move closer to the eclipse cycle, the first one will be the solar eclipse on
the 25th.
On the 25th.
Christmas. Do you celebrate Christmas?
Yeah, I'm half Christian. I'm half Protestant. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My parents had a love marriage, which was a big scandal back in the 80s in India, where people didn't even allow intercaste marriage. My parents had an interreligion marriage.
Wow.
So I was brought up by a Hindu Brahmin and a Protestant, and given complete freedom to choose whatever. And here I am.
And you chose being a scientist and an astrologer.
Yeah. Yes. So when we come to the eclipse cycle, we have Sun, Moon, Mercury is Gandhanta. It's just crossed over into Sagittarius from Scorpio. And Jupiter, we have like 4 luminaries in the sign of Mula. And Mula is symbolized by roots, literally uprooting. But the deity is Kali, goddess Kali. Um, and I love mythology because it really helps tie in all these different energies into stories that one can really understand and comprehend, especially the common man, because uh, you need the form and the stories as training wheels for spirituality till you can really ride the bicycle without having these forms and stories, and you're a pro. So really, like, thinking about or invoking Kali would I don't recommend that callously, because there can be repercussions of invoking Kali and just I want to be transformative and stuff. But
yeah, that's a good thing to say, because you see people, especially now, just real quick, who with all the internet memes and stuff, and you got to be careful. This it's not a game. That's real stuff. People, I saw a couple of years ago where it was actually a girl that I knew quite well. She went kind of off the deep end with the Dasa Mahavidyas, some of those really fierce Kali forms like Chinnamasta, the decapitated, self-decapitated. She's posting this all over the place, and she's like, "Yeah," I'm like, "You better be careful." And she had some major difficult things start to happen. So these are, you know, serious things. So
yeah, these are serious things. But like, it's enough to just meditate upon her form, because
yeah,
her form itself is very powerful.
right,
And Kali is an evolved form of Parvati. Parvati, Shiva's wife. She was a maiden when she married him. And then when she was with Shiva, she underwent an evolution to turn into Durga and then Kali. And this happened when she was presented with this challenge of these asuras or demons. Uh, and when she attains the final form of Kali, she is slaying the demon called Raktabija, who had the boon that if his blood falls on, uh, even a drop of his blood falls on the earth, he can clone himself back into a being.
right.
So genetic engineering to the nth level. So she actually cuts his head and his arms, and then drinks the blood instead of the blood falling on the floor. And there's a deep metaphor there. Your head is your ego, which often comes in power struggles. People want power because their egos are so inflated. And
And
at the end,
your ideas in mind. Yeah,
the ideas in their mind. And at the end of the day, nobody cares about doing good in the world. Everything is about, pleasing someone's inflated ego. So cutting the head uh, and getting rid of ego, and then cutting hands, and she wears it around her like a skirt. Uh, and your hands are your attachments that don't serve you anymore. And a lot of times people will just keep on repeating the same cycle, the same tape recorder, because they're just so attached to the way they have been. They don't know how else to be. Uh, so it's a very powerful form, Kali. Uh, and she dances in a trance, and then Shiva is there, and all that stuff happens. But it's a good form to meditate on. Uh,
I think what you just mentioned, though, and actually, I would love to hear you talk about a little bit more. Um, the evolution from Parvati to Durga to Kali, and the obviously, Parvati is like the mother and the wife, um, and they even like the lover, um, the sort of feminine, archetype, I guess we would say, and then Durga is more like the protective mother, like of the children and stuff like that, and then Kali is the protector of like the entire world. Had
mhm.
to had to had to take on the fiercest form in order to destroy. Um, I also know as the Mahishasura, which is also there are a couple different stories. The Mahishasura is the one that I know as well. There's the Mahishasura. Mahishasura Mardini is one of the great stories in what's called the Chandipat. There's a lot of this whole story of the fierce form. And by the way, women, if you want to feel empowered in this day and age, forget all this Western stuff. Go read some of that Indian literature about when, if you feel empowered, go read the Chandipat and what Durga does and Kali does. But do you have anything else to say, like even about that evolution? Because I think that's really a great thing. One of the great things about Indians, for me, by the way, is because you're so raised in the culture, you know many more stories than I do.
So yeah, like you said, there are many stories, and I can touch upon one of them.
Yeah.
And so Parvati is this young, newlywed Shiva's wife. She's so enamored by him, and you're right about the whole romanticism between them. And then Shiva undertakes this whole thing about transferring his knowledge to Parvati, and that whole romantic story is going on. At the same time, there are two demons, Sumba and Nisumba, uh, who are on the quest to be the conquerors or the lords of desire, everything that has form and everything that is formless. So that's one set of demons. The second set of demons is Chand and Mund.
Chandamunda, yeah.
Chand and Mund. And they see Parvati and they are enamored by her form. She's really beautiful. And they go and tell Sumba and Nisumba that there is this woman who's the ultimate form. And, you should conquer her. And Sumba and Nisumba have this boon that no man or no demon can kill them. There is nothing about goddesses.
Just no man or god.
No man or god or other demons, other asura.
Or other demons, okay.
Can kill them. So they send Chand and Mund. They first send a smaller demon called Drumalochana to abduct Parvati. And being this delicate maiden, she has to transform herself into Durga to kill Drumalochana. And then they send Chand and Mund come themselves. She slays them and becomes Chamundeshwari. She evolves into a higher form. Then Raktavija is sent. He's a demon whose blood, if it falls on the soil, he'll clone himself into one more. And that's when she becomes Kali, because she has to keep evolving and becoming stronger and stronger and stronger in order to take on all these demons that are thrown at her. And then she drinks Raktavija's blood to prevent it from falling on the floor. She cuts all the clones' heads and wears around her as a garland. She cuts the clone's hands, wears it as a skirt. Finally, she slays Sumba and Nisumba. And she's dancing in this trance. And the trance is just so fierce. She's stomping with her feet and creating rhythm. Her hair is creating these storms and winds. And so in order to bring her out of that trance, Shiva, this is a tantric story where Shiva starts dancing with her. And then when she starts dancing with Shiva, she finally calms down and comes out of that trance of drinking so much blood and just dancing. So that's one of the stories. And I don't know if you know, it's happening in India right now, where there are these horrific rape stories, and women are just stabbed and raped and killed. And there's something that's come up right now, very recent, and the whole Kali story reminds me of that, where women.
I didn't know it was as prominent now, but I knew a few years ago this had really resurfaced.
As a couple of days ago, there was this MD in Hyderabad who was gang raped and killed, burnt alive.
Oh.
There was one in northern India. The woman was gang raped, stabbed, and burnt alive, and she ran for a kilometer till somebody came and helped her. But she was ablaze. She sustained 90% burns, and then she died.
Oh.
There are these horrific things that are happening, which reminds us of that Mula energy, where not only women but men have to grow and evolve into the next phase and uproot and get rid of the old bullshit system that don't serve anybody anymore, and evolve your masculinity and evolve the feminine side of all beings, so that these things don't happen. And there's an entire uproar happening in India, and people are and rapes have been happening forever, but these guys are getting away on bail, and
Is part of it also, though, because there's been more awareness now? Because I remember there was quite a renaissance a few years ago where women, again, not as if rape has ever been, rape, quote, has been acceptable, but it was hidden. It was seen as such a disgrace that women wouldn't report it for a long time. And within the last several years, I believe it was when Saturn was going through Libra. I think around that time, Saturn and Rahu were going through Libra, and there was that exalted Saturn. We started to see a lot more of those stories at that time around, and women started fighting back a lot more in India. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that was about 7 years ago. That's when the first most horrific thing came out, where this woman called Nirbhaya in India was gang raped on a bus, and
they had a pole and they
stuck it through her.
Yeah, that's what I remember. I remember that, and it caused this outrage a lot. And I remember even in Amma's ashram, she started telling women to, what to do if men started bugging them and stuff like that. It was, and it brought a lot of social consciousness at the time.
Yeah.
I just want to point this out. Well, let me say this really, really quickly, though. I want to point this out. This is also analogous to a lot of things that were happening where liberalism and equality and human rights around the globe at that time, Saturn going through Libra, a lot of that was also happening in the U.S., where we had a president that was more forward-thinking. There was a lot of the gay rights stuff that started happening a lot here, gay marriage. All of those things started happening in the U.S. as well. And we started seeing then when Saturn went into Scorpio, and now in Sagittarius, we're seeing a backlash against it. We're seeing a backlash from conservatives against the liberalism that's not just shown here with race or things like that, but also in these women's rights, and even like the Me Too stuff that started. There's always this light and dark. There's progress, and then there's struggle.
Yes, and the conversations in India especially have started to change, because when 7 years ago things started coming to light, people started controlling women more. You have to dress a certain way, don't go out at certain times.
Right.
Now the conversation is changing, wherein people are like, train the men, train the boys, make them more enlightened. Don't make them entitled, which is.
And then those who feel entitled, again, this is like we're seeing in this country, like I'll just say it, even though it's not really PC, but the old white people don't want to give up the power. They want to be the ones that still run everything. And so let's just say it like that. That's where a lot of this entitlement comes from. And this is why we see the rise of like nationalism and even Nazism and all kinds of stuff that we thought we were done with in the US.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of entitlement. Like in India, it would show up as, hey, let's go back to the good old days when we were in charge, and the heck with this incursion, right?
Yes.
I also want to say a couple more things, though, and draw out a couple things about the Shiva Parvati story before I forget. Mm-hmm. One is about Kali cutting off and fighting the demons. We have to understand these are metaphors for our life and our mind as well. And the metaphor of the demon, what's the demon's name again? I forgot. Who keeps sprouting blood, a new body every place the blood.
Rakta Bija.
What?
Rakta Bija.
Rakta Bija.
And Bija means seed.
Bija means seed. Rakta. I know Rikta. Rakta probably means something fierce. Blood?
Blood.
Oh, that's right. Rakta. Yeah, that's right. What am I talking about? Rakta. Yeah. Rakta is blood. Yeah. So it means like drop of blood.
Yeah.
So Rakta Bija is a symbol for you, not you, Malini, but for all of us. Kali is there trying to protect us, trying to show us the truth. She cuts off one head, and all the blood that would splatter form 1,000 new bodies that she needs to keep trying to catch up with, to cut off all of our wrong ideas. We think we have one ego. well, we get burdened of one and 10 more sprout up from what the previous head. You know, we think one head is bad enough. We lose one thing and we gain 1,000 more. So this real symbol of Kali on a personal level is she can hardly keep up with all of our crazy ideas and crazy attachments to those ideas, because the attachments, which are the arms, she wears a garland of skulls around her neck, like a necklace of skulls, and a skirt of arms that are dangling from her waist. The ideas create the attachment. So she cuts off the head, 1,000 more heads and bodies spring, and then the arms want to grab onto it. So she's constantly cutting off heads and arms. Like, stop the crazy ideas and stop all the attachment.
Yeah.
The other thing, just real quick too, about the Shiva and Parvati and their original form, which is so beautiful, you know, is that loving embrace of where Shiva is not really of this world, and Parvati wanted to be with Shiva to create this world, right? And then she has to like go out there and defend it. Then Shiva's like, well, if you want to create a world, you're going to have a lot of problems, because this world is going to be what it is. So Shiva was there with, there's no world. There's no need for a world. Parvati's like, okay, but I want a world. So he teaches her. This is what the ancient Tantra is very much a loving transmission from Shiva to Parvati. And learning everything. Shiva is like, especially in that form of Shankara, the bringer of knowledge and wisdom. He has the knowledge of the universe and just wants to not create a bunch of stuff to distract, but just be in meditation. But Parvati says, no, let's have all kinds of creatures that can know your true nature, Shiva. And he's like, okay, be careful what you wish for. So let me teach you about the nature of the world first before you go doing all this stuff. And so he teaches her, and this is a lot of what Tantra is, and also Shaivism and Shiva Shakti on a very metaphysical level, even beyond Sankhya philosophy, but even on the level of Kashmir Shaivism with the tattvas and Shiva Shakti, the duality between Purusha, Prakriti. It's Shiva and Shakti, and Parvati's relationship starts from this non-dual to a dualistic state, where everything is merged in Shiva, and Parvati is the expression of that divine energy. And then it comes down into the complexity of form, and then this whole universe is Parvati as Durga and Kali trying to liberate us from our ignorance. Is that a good way to explain it?
You see it, and that's perfect. That's great. That's bang on. And you see it here. You see the Shiva Parvati play out, because you have all these planets in Mula, and then you have Rahu in Ardra.
Oh, yeah.
And the primitive wild form of Shiva, which is Rudra, the untamed form of Shiva. And he has this dual nature where he's extremely pure, but he's extremely soft. He creates destruction, but then from his tears, new life comes into existence. And then Rudra, and there are a few symbolisms that's happening here. Rudra, his weapon is the bow and the arrow. And then we have Saturn and Ketu in Purvashada, and that's also the pulled back portion of the bow, Purvashada. So like, and also symbolized by the winnowing basket. So having really a lot of discernment, and then pointing towards where you want to go. I mean, Rahu in Gemini is very wise, intelligent, intellectual, and Gemini gives that quality of having strong discernments, and know where you want to go, know what you want to create, and aim for it. And that's shown in the symbology of the whole eclipse cycle that we are going. Uproot what doesn't serve you, get rid of your ego and attachments, and then aim towards the next phase of evolution, with a lot of discernment, and then go forward.
That's beautiful.
So,
and, something I just noticed, and I'd never thought of it before, but the other thing about Purvashada is the deity is Apus, which is the ocean. And Rudra, of course, is the storm god, where the symbol is the teardrop.
Yes.
Rudra. And really, that section, this section up here of Ardra is literally like even a kind of formalizing of Rudra. It's like Arudra. Rudra is even in the name Ardra. But this is literally where Shiva, and this is actually Shiva's original name. This is literally, we call him Shiva, but Shiva is actually a sort of like a description of Rudra, because in the Sri Rudram, which is the chant from the Yajurveda, this is where Shiva actually originated, but he was called Rudra. And Shiva means auspicious. And it's actually, they're saying Shiva Rudraya, they're saying Shiva as a greeting or as a title, or basically as a thing that says, oh, auspicious Rudra, don't kill us all, or please give us good stuff, because Rudra is like the real sort of badass. Rudra is like the fiercest of the deities that even took down Lord Brahma, which nobody could take on Brahma except Rudra. Rudra was the fiercest of them all. And so in the Sri Rudram, they're calling him Shiva Rudra. Shiva, literally the word means auspicious, or, delicate, auspicious one. So they're calling him Shiva Rudra, like auspicious Rudra. Again, please have mercy on us. Please make sure that our crops grow. Please, protect us from our enemies and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like a greeting. This is what the word Shiva actually means. So we call him Shiva now, which is a softer form. It's actually a term from the Puranic texts. But the nakshatras and all these stories that we're talking about are from the Vedas, which are much more direct, fierce energies.
Yeah.
And in the Vedas, Shiva is Rudra. This is where Shiva is in the sky, is in this nakshatra of Ardra, which is also right on the plane of the galaxy. Right on the galactic plane, we have Ardra and Mula, and this one, Mula, is related to Kali, and this is related to Shiva. And again, the symbol of Ardra is that teardrop, that water, and the symbol of Purvashada is the ocean.
Yeah.
So I've never put that together before, but that's beautiful how the last two padas of Mula is it the last two padas, and then no, because the last two padas of Mula and the first two padas of Purva Ashada have this quality where there's water on both ends.
Yeah, and with water you create new life.
Yeah, but also that this section of Sagittarius is also very much about devotion. This is what Purvashada is as well.
Yeah. That's the other thing I want to talk about. So during the eclipse cycle, we have Venus in the nakshatra of Shravana, which it's broken away from all these concentrated energies in Sagittarius, but Venus is that part of us that wants to feel good in the moment and feel comfortable and not be confused and not be like just triggered all the time. So when a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of triggers will come up and buttons will get pushed, the quality of Shravana Nakshatra is music and sound, mantras. So listening to mantras and all is great, but if you're a musician or you practice music one way or the other, you can use that as a form of meditation and just like bring the mind back to center and not just being bogged down with all the darkness in the world that is coming up. And it's coming up so that we can get rid of it, we can uproot it, and we can transform it. But the mind and your being might feel like it's too much, and when it feels too much, it's great to have some kind of practice with music. Even just listening to music will bring.
It's very devotional as well.
It's very devotional, yeah.
And there's a lot of devotional potential here as well. Again, also with these planets in Purva Ashada.
Yes. Lots of devotion. Yeah. That's all I had on the eclipse cycle, unless you have something more to add to it.
Well, the only thing I haven't talked about it much because I've just focused on the solar eclipse. The only thing that I guess would also sort of continue the theme, again, all this Mula energy is showing all these things in transition right now. And again, we can see it in the world, especially, in not just political situations here, but all around the world, where those old, worn out systems are getting uprooted, and there's fear of what comes next. That's always what happens when it sort of creates a hole in our life and in our mind. And one of the most stressful things for people is a lack of certainty, like not knowing what's going to happen. Even if we know it's going to be hard, we want to know what it is. And right now there's like the abyss, and that's what this section of the sky is. It's kind of like the abyss. And the thing to understand is this Mula Ardra axis is where the plane of the galaxy runs. This is literally the galactic plane. When you look in the sky, you look up in the sky and you're looking at the sun on this day. The sun is in 928 Mula, which is right on the plane of the galaxy, right near the galactic core. And so this is the transformational section of the zodiac, literally. And you want to understand it's not just metaphysical, it's also physical, because the radiation from the center of the galaxy would destroy our solar system if it weren't for what's called the heliosphere, which is the sun's protective sort of coating, I guess you would say. The sun isn't just the ball in the sky. The sun emits what's called a heliosphere, which protects the entire solar system from the radiation from the galactic center.
Yeah.
And from the galactic plane. And so this, if the sun weren't there protecting the solar system, we would be destroyed by gamma rays and X-rays. Life probably wouldn't have been able to develop because of how harmful those things are to our tissues. So this is in a very transformative section of the sky. This is why Ardra Mula is what it is, and these fierce deities are rulers. It's not a game, they put these face on these things. And again, this is also the Vedic cosmology. This isn't just, I think I'll just make up anything about it. No, this is Ardra and Mula, and they exist in Gemini and Sagittarius. Of course, Vedic astrology is purely sidereal, and you see it in these kinds of things when you get into the cosmic implications of nakshatras and rashis and the ancient primal zodiac. This is why, and this is these different sections of these rashis as well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And Mula is that first section of Sagittarius where we uproot a lot of the pressure and stress and fear and imagined fear of Scorpio and plant new seeds. Because until we plant those new seeds in Sagittarius, that hope and inspiration and purpose will not happen. We'll just keep cycling through the same stuff. So the first part of a new cycle of growth and hope is pulling out the old stuff. That's the first thing. And that kind of wrenching transition is what can be happening right now with this solar eclipse. But then after that, the next nakshatra, of course, is Purva Ashada, which is the very devotional section, which we were talking about. That's where Saturn and Ketu are. And then it moves on from there. But you want to understand these rashis and nakshatras are totally aligned in this way. The only thing I wanted to talk about a little bit too was the full moon, and this one as well, because I haven't really said much about this one yet. This full moon here. Anything you wanted to add about that? It's going to be in Punarvasu.
Yeah. So the full moon, when moon is joined Rahu, will lead to a lunar eclipse. Of course, from I don't think so that one we can see it from United States. It's a partial eclipse, and Punarvasu is the nakshatra of, it's called, literally translated to return of light. So after going through this whirlpool of emotions and drama and not knowing where things are going, we can expect that in a couple of weeks when moon joins Rahu, there will be these light bulbs that go on and people will be like, maybe we can try that. Maybe we can try the next thing. And so, and then Gemini is a very intellectual sign. also a sign where one is willing to work with others. It's a very friendly sign. So how do you work with others? How do you build communities? How do you, even if you're working towards building a system, the first step is to work with the other person. So getting these ideas, these light bulbs, and then how do you work with the other person to implement it?
Right. And especially after, like we said, the potential fanaticism of all the Sagittarius energy, because it can be that kind of uprooting and we have to, we're seeing where we're having to really come down on one side of an issue or, and not the other. We're all feeling that polarizing around this Sagittarius. What's right and what's wrong? We're seeing what's right and what's wrong now. But we can't just stay in our polarized camp. Like Malini's saying, this is the greatness of Gemini. It provides this contrast, this point of contrast to Sagittarius. This is just the nature of the signs. Gemini's opposite Sagittarius for that reason, because Sagittarius, we can be very religious and just believe what we believe, and that's it. And Gemini says, but wait a minute, what about these other beliefs? What about what these other people think as well? Because we can get very polarized and boxed into our own fanatical views, especially with Ketu Jupiter. And you can also see by the time, the one thing about this eclipse as well, obviously both of them, but by the time we have this lunar eclipse, Ketu and Jupiter are exact. Yeah. So again, this is really showing where we can be very narrow in our beliefs.
Yes.
And
all the planets have moved in from Mula to Purva Ashada. So renewed sense of hope, feeling more emotionally stable, and then willing to take action and implement stuff. That is expected to happen.
Yeah, and particularly if you're a spiritual person with a spiritual practice and all that, these things are really, this is really the thing that we're mainly focusing on here, is to transform your negative tendencies through devotion and whatnot. On that full moon, that new moon eclipse could be quite wrenching, but there's definitely support, especially with the planets in Purvashada and Venus in Shravana, like Malini said. But then as it moves on, all these planets moving into Purvashada is going to be quite devotional. So don't be afraid to go into that deeper place and pull out those negative tendencies. It's just Goddess Kali trying to protect you. Because the only things that can be destroyed are things that were unreal, that you were attached to. Nothing real can ever be destroyed. Only the unreal can be destroyed.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of unreal. So, but by the time we get to this full moon, there should be a lot more lightness, a lot more playfulness, and a lot more, gratitude and higher qualities of Sagittarius, where we're very grateful for our teachings, grateful to our teachers, grateful that we found an answer, because those are the best things we get in life. We obsess over money and other people and all that. All that's fine. But the best things we can ever get really are teachings, and those teachings that lead us to practices, and hopefully a teacher that we trust that's good, or something like that, a belief that leads to a practice. Those are the things money can never buy. And your soul is yearning for that. That's what your soul is here for, that. It's not here to be happy and make money and all that. It's here to actually learn something. And one of the great things about Sagittarius is it's where we're really looking for some good teachings. This is why I've been talking about that. We're really looking for the right teachings and ready to uproot the bad ones. And so this full moon in Gemini is going to really bring together. It might feel really polarized and a little bit yucky over here, because you might have to pull out some bad influences in your life. But by the time you get around to Gemini, you'll start to see it in a way that's not as harsh, where you can even go back to some of the people or the situations that felt really triggering and be more psychologically and sort of mentally calm about it. So be careful about blowing up things around that eclipse, because a couple of months later you might have to apologize if you blow it up too much. Sometimes the best thing to do is nothing, which is also a good part of this, because Saturn being there is could really prevent us from doing crazy stuff. There's a lot of energy there, and with Jupiter in its own sign and Saturn also there, there's a lot of structure and wisdom to hold it together and not, go off our rocker, especially if we have some good teachings.
Yeah. The last thing I want to say about this is I from the spiritual or the yoga community, um, and I see a lot of people have some kind of devotional practice, some kind of sadhana going on, uh, but especially yogis or spiritual seekers have dysfunctional relationship to either money, food, uh, sex, uh, and just their social ego, and making the being the Instagram star for having all these yoga poses and things like that. So
What about a YouTube star? Is that okay?
or a YouTube star. Uh, so yes, in social systems we can see it, but on a personal level, for a serious spiritual seeker, it's a great time to build a healthy relationship uh, with food, sex, money, things that really weigh you down. These are lessons that Venus teaches us, and how to just come to normalcy uh, with stuff that the body needs to survive on this planet is very important for spiritual seekers. And this is a great time to do that.
I see that. Yeah, and the deity of this full moon here, Punarvasu, is also a divine mother energy called Aditi, who is the mother of the Adityas. And the Adityas are the incarnations or the emanations of the sun that give us a healthy and happy life. The thing about we compartmentalize things because we don't know the nature of the self, and we think is it spiritual or material or this or that, and there are no, these are all false distinctions that we make. They prayed for wealth and prosperity and happiness and wisdom and long life and children and good sex and good food. I mean, they realized all of it's all divine. And in fact, it's our karma that brings us back to try to experience that. This is why we have karma with the earth and karma with the body. If you didn't have karma with the body, you wouldn't be here. And so there's a false distinction between material prosperity, material happiness, and spirituality. And the real trick is to be comfortable with all of it.
Yes.
And so this Aditi and these Adityas, they really populate this section of the zodiac from Leo to Scorpio. The Adityas are like Savitur, Bhagha, who is the god of delight, Mitra, who is the god of friendship, Aryaman, who is the god of contracts and like official business, Vishwakarma, who is the god of like building things and architecture, the god of Chitra, Nakshatra. So, and like passion and enjoying life. Especially when you look at divine beings who have evolved and who have become enlightened or whatnot, they're happy with all of it. They usually have prosperity, they have wealth, they're happy, they're not worried about that.
Yeah.
And the closer you get to your true nature, the less you'll be tangled up. I don't mean you, I mean people listening, myself included, all of us, the less we're tangled up around those false choices.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, we'll have you back, and between now and the time Saturn goes into Capricorn, because we didn't get to that, we got into other things. My fault. I can't help but pick Dr. Malini's brain when we get into neuroscience, and I want to hear what she has to say about it, because I don't know that many people that have studied it. So this was great. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did too.
Yes, I totally did. And thank you, Sam. Thank you for having me. It's a great honor for me to be doing this with you. I look up to you, and
well, I look up to you too, and everybody does that knows you. So how do people get a hold of you? We'll have your links in the description below,
yes.
But website, Facebook page, other things like that. What's your business name and all that, so people know?
So I actually created a website right out of level 2 back in 2015.
I remember.
It's called astro-gps.com.
Astro-gps.com. We'll have the link.
Yeah. And you can email me at info@astro-gps.com. There's a Facebook page with that name. I am trying to reinvent the whole thing because when I did that, I was a little more less versed in astrology. But when I do that, I will let you know. But right now,
well, it's still there, and I'll just let people know too about Dr. Malini here is that she's studied. She's one of the most technical of my students. That not just technical, but knowing how to interpret many different modalities. Like when I taught Gemini astrology, boy, Malini was all over it. I mean, I like having Malini in the class because she catches things that I might not catch all the time. This is why I'm always happy to have great students who really know what they're doing, because they always improve the class. They always catch stuff. And just like when we were at the conference, the reason those classes go so well now, those public classes, is because there's so many smart students there. I can go and teach. If I go teach and try to teach advanced material and it's over everybody's head, then it kind of lays an egg. But having really smart students, even like the transits class, which was pretty accelerated, if you excellent students weren't there to keep it moving along and keep the conversation rolling, it bogs down and gets stuck. So Malini is an excellent astrologer, and people ask me for readings all the time, and I'm not always doing them. But look her up, look at her website, and we'll have her information down here, and you should get a consultation. She will definitely take care of you. As you can hear, she's very conversant in all of the mythology, the practice, how to break down the charts. We didn't really scratch the surface in how to read charts, technically, but she really knows what she's doing. So thank you so much, Malini. It was great to spend time with you, and we'll have you back on again.
Yeah, thank you.